Didn't you do the very same thing to my daughter? The words weren't spoken in anger, and that somehow made them hurt even more. A sharp ache twisted deep inside Jungkook's chest. His breathing slowed. His fingers unconsciously tightened around his knees. For the first time since walking into your home, Jungkook couldn't find a single word to say. Had he really done the same thing? Different reasons, different circumstances. Yet, to the person left behind, did either of those things truly matter? No. The word escaped almost instinctively. Jungkook shook his head, a little too quickly. No, ma'am. I didn't. Your mother offered him a faint, weary smile before gently shaking her head. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Jungkook. Her voice remained calm, gentle. Whatever your reasons were, you still left her. She paused, allowing the words to settle between them. Whether you believed you were protecting yourself or protecting her, her eyes softened. It doesn't change how it shattered her once you left her behind. A heavy silence settled over the room. All Yen has ever wanted from the man she loved was someone who stayed. Through the good days, and especially through the bad ones. Every word landed with quiet precision. It felt as though every sentence peeled away another layer of the guilt Jungkook had spent years burying beneath necessity, responsibility, and sacrifice. His gaze slowly fell to the floor. A sharp sting burned behind his eyes. You had never told him this. Never once had you spoken about how deeply his leaving had wounded you. Never told him that, for a little while, he had unknowingly become another person who walked out of your life. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. Years ago. Back when the two of you had still been in college. He had laughed and asked why, out of everyone, you had chosen him. And you had smiled without a second's hesitation. Because you never run away from your problems. Your eyes had sparkled with quiet admiration. No matter how difficult they are, you face them head on. I think that's what I love about you the most. The memory hollowed something inside him. His shoulders sagged. One trembling hand rose to cover his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely more than a whisper. I'm sorry. His breathing faltered. I'm so sorry I did that to your daughter. He bit down hard on his lower lip, willing himself to stay composed. The realization was unbearable. Not because he had intended to hurt you, but because he finally understood that intention hadn't protected you from the pain. And what broke him even more was remembering that when he finally returned, you hadn't blamed him. You hadn't made him carry the weight of your hurt. Instead, you had listened. You had understood. You had comforted him.
The thought punched the air out of his chest. For the first time in years, Jungkook wondered whether he had ever deserved a love as forgiving as yours. He hastily wiped at the tears gathering in his eyes before swallowing against the painful lump in his throat. I understand now. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, ma'am. Silence settled between them once again. A frightening thought crept into his mind, one that made his hands tremble slightly in his lap. Would walking away now be the only way to make things right? If loving you meant hurting you once already, did he truly have the right to stand beside you again? Would you still choose him? If one day you realized you deserved much more than him? Across from him, your mother simply watched. A few strands of hair had fallen over his forehead, hiding part of his face. From down the hallway, your muffled voice drifted into the living room as you continued your conversation with the office. The ordinary sound of your voice only made the silence between them feel heavier. Jungkook drew in a long, steady breath before rubbing a hand over his face. When he finally looked up again, something had changed. The conflict that had clouded his eyes moments ago had settled into quiet resolve. I don't think I'll ever truly earn your forgiveness. And I don't think I'll ever forgive myself either. He lowered his eyes briefly, as though shame itself lowered them. I won't ask her to marry me. A pause. If that isn't what she wants.
But he looked back at your mother. I can't leave her again. If I chose to walk away now, knowing everything I know, he shook his head. I'd become exactly the man she once believed I never could be. I am sorry. I can't erase what I did. He blinked his red-rimmed eyes. And I can't ask either of you to forget it. But if she'll still have me, his voice softened, stirring something deep within your mother's heart. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that our future doesn't have to resemble our past. If one day she decides she'd be happier without me, his lips trembled almost imperceptibly. The words seemed to resist leaving him. I'll let her go, ma'am. He lowered his gaze for a moment before speaking again. And I understand if you can't see me as the right man for your daughter. But please, he swallowed hard. Just give me one more chance. I'll spend the rest of my life choosing her, no matter what life asks of me. Your mother's eyes widened slightly as Jungkook quietly lowered himself onto his knees before her. His hands rested neatly upon his lap. His head bowed, not in desperation, but in humility. There was nothing theatrical about the gesture. If anything, it carried the quiet weight of a man who could no longer bear the burden of his own regrets. She instinctively leaned forward. Jungkook. There was genuine alarm in her voice now. Please, get up. After a brief hesitation, he slowly rose to his feet. Your mother studied him for a long moment before letting out a quiet sigh. It's getting late. Her voice had softened. You should head home for tonight. Jungkook kept his eyes lowered. He didn't argue, didn't plead, even though every part of him wanted nothing more than to walk to your room, pull you into his arms, and apologize. Again and again, until there were no apologies left to give. The rest of the evening, his thoughts never left you. Not on the drive home, not while unlocking the front door. Not even as the familiar mechanical voice announced that the apartment had been opened. He barely heard it. He didn't bother changing out of his clothes, nor did he switch on the lights. He simply let his exhausted body and an even heavier mind sink into the couch. His thoughts trapped him in an endless loop. Tiny moments, fragments of conversations he'd once dismissed without a second thought. The quiet disdain that always crossed your face whenever your father was mentioned. The little remarks you'd make whenever someone abandoned their responsibilities. The disappointment in your voice whenever you heard about relationships falling apart because someone chose to walk away instead of staying. And then, that night in the elevator, your voice echoed through the silence of the apartment as though you were standing right beside him. Since when did you become such a coward that you won't even take responsibility for the life you brought into this world? His throat tightened painfully. How had he never seen it before?
Those moments, they had never been about strangers, never about random stories. Somewhere, buried beneath every passing comment, was a little girl who had been abandoned by the first man she ever trusted. And without ever meaning to, he had made her relive it, when all you had ever done was believe in him, trust him, love him. His chest tightened until breathing itself became difficult. A tear slipped free before he even realized it. He stared blankly at the dark ceiling. What kind of man am I? The question barely escaped as a whisper. He scrubbed both hands harshly over his face, forcing away the fresh tears. For one brief moment, silence. Then another thought crashed into him, a far more terrifying one. What if she changes her mind? His heart lurched. What if she wakes up tomorrow and decides she can't love me anymore? He sat upright so abruptly the couch shifted beneath him. Restlessness flooded every nerve in his body. He began pacing aimlessly across the apartment, back and forth, again and again. What the hell? He stopped in the middle of the room, shoulders rising and falling with an uneven breath. His fingers disappeared into his hair, gripping it in frustration. What have I done? His chest rose sharply as he dragged in another breath. He squeezed his eyes shut, slowly, deliberately, trying to gather the pieces of himself. When he finally opened them again, the faint glow of the digital clock caught his attention. It was almost midnight. For a brief second, he simply stared at it. Then his body moved before his mind could stop it. He grabbed his keys. 2 helmets. By the time the thought of, "What are you doing?" crossed his mind, he was already rushing down the apartment stairs. His fingers hurriedly typed out a message. "Baby, please be ready in 5 minutes. I'm coming to pick you up." The next moment, the deep roar of his black motorcycle shattered the silence of the dark night. He sped through the empty streets, the city lights streaking past him in blurred ribbons of gold and white. The cold wind lashed against him with every passing second, whipping through his hair and biting at his skin. He barely felt it. His grip tightened around the handlebars as he twisted the throttle. The engine growled louder beneath him. His fingers had long since gone numb from the night's chill. But his heart, it burned with a dissonance that refused to settle. He didn't slow down. Not until he reached your neighborhood. Only then did he finally pull over. His breathing remained uneven as he reached for his phone. The message still hadn't been seen. A quiet sigh escaped him. Were you already asleep? For the first time since leaving his apartment, his racing thoughts finally began to settle. And with them, his senses returned. What am I doing? Standing beneath your balcony at midnight? What did he come here for? What was he even planning to say? He hadn't thought that far. He had simply gotten on his bike and ridden to you. Now, standing there beneath the quiet night sky, his own actions seemed almost irrational. A quiet breath escaped him as he slipped off his helmet. His thumb hovered over your name. My queen. Your contact sat alone at the top of his screen. And just beneath it, your smile. It was an old photograph, one he'd secretly taken years ago, back at university, when you hadn't been looking. You'd been laughing at something. He couldn't even remember what it was anymore. Only your smile had stayed with him. He had never once changed that wallpaper. He never found the heart to. Every time he looked at it, it reminded him why he'd made the choice to walk away all those years ago. He had convinced himself that every lonely day had been worth protecting that smile. His thumb lingered over your photo. Tonight, that certainty no longer felt so unshakable. Because if protecting your smile had been the reason he left, then why had he become the one who had taken it away? His chest tightened. Did he even deserve to be the person that smile was meant for anymore? He opened his mouth, inhaling sharply.
His own thoughts were eating him. He locked his phone and tucked it back into his pocket. No, he shouldn't disturb you. You were probably exhausted after the long day. It didn't matter if sleep refused to come to him tonight. It didn't matter if the weight in his chest made his own skin feel unbearable. Your peace had always mattered more to him than his own. He reached for the ignition. Jungkook? His head snapped upward almost instinctively. Eyes widened with a kind of innocent surprise that made him look years younger. There you were. Resting one hand against the railing, you leaned over ever so slightly, looking down at him in quiet confusion. Your face flushed fresh from a warm bath. Damp strands of hair clinging to the sides of your face as you slowly worked a towel through them. Jungkook couldn't look away. From the soft blush coloring your cheeks, from the damp strands of your waving hair adorning your neck more beautifully than any jewel ever could. And your eyes, the quiet concern lingering within them. He looked almost ethereal, like an angel who had wandered quietly into his life. So peaceful.
So gentle. So utterly untouched by the storm raging inside him. Despite everything weighing on his heart, a faint smile found its way onto his face. Right. You must have been taking your nightly bath. It had completely slipped his mind. You had always loved ending your day with a long, relaxing shower. What happened, baby? Your voice drifted down to him, carrying that familiar warmth that never failed to settle his restless heart. For a fleeting second, his eyes almost fluttered shut. Jungkook smiled and shook his head. Nothing. A small breath escaped him. I just missed you. The words left him so naturally that he barely realized he'd said.
His smile deepened when he saw your expression soften into one of unmistakable fondness. Then he noticed your gaze wandering. From him to the black leather jacket, then to the motorcycle parked beneath your balcony. A knowing smile tugged at your lips. You quickly glanced around the quiet neighborhood, making sure no curious neighbors were watching before tossing the towel back inside your room. Raising a brow, you looked down at him again. So, your voice carried that familiar teasing lilt. You thought it was gentlemanly to show up at a girl's house in the middle of the night? A tiny pause. On your ridiculously attractive bike? A quiet chuckle escaped Jungkook. The heaviness weighing on his chest eased, if only for a moment. His lips curved into an amused smirk as he tilted his head toward the motorcycle. I figured my girl might want to take this dark beauty for a ride. He lifted a brow. So, not gentlemanly enough? He barely finished speaking before he caught the unmistakable sparkle in your eyes. Your excitement betrayed you almost instantly. Really? Your voice lifted with childlike enthusiasm. Jungkook couldn't help but laugh. Of course. You pulled away from the railing, unable to hide the grin spreading across your face. Your heart skipped in anticipation. Wait for me. I'll be down in 5. The next few minutes passed in a flurry of hurried movements. You quickly rummaged through your wardrobe before pulling out the only black jacket you owned and slipped into a black denim jeans. Moments later, you were tiptoeing through your dark hallway, careful not to let the old wooden floor creak beneath your feet. You paused outside your mother's room, cautiously peeking through the slightly open door. Darkness. Silence. She was asleep. A quiet sigh of relief escaped you. You slipped outside, gently easing the front door shut behind you, until the latch clicked into place without a sound. The cool night air greeted you instantly,
brushing against your cheeks and fingertips. Your eyes immediately searched for him. There he was, still seated astride his motorcycle, both feet planted firmly on the ground, his back resting completely against the raised pillion seat, as his gaze remained fixed on the star-filled sky. But he wasn't really looking at the stars. He was lost somewhere inside his own thoughts. The moment he noticed you, he straightened almost instinctively, pushing himself upright. "Don't get up." Your voice stopped him before he could fully stand. You hurried across the short distance separating you. The instant you reached him, your arms wrapped tightly around his neck. You peppered his cheeks with a flurry of enthusiastic kisses, one after another. His laughter vibrated softly against your shoulder. Without thinking, his arms slid securely around your waist, pulling you closer until there wasn't an inch of space left between you. His arms tightened further around you, as though holding you just a little closer might silence the thoughts that had tormented him all evening. And somehow, it did. For the first time that night, breathing came easily. He wanted to lose himself in the quiet comfort of your embrace. But you were far too excited. Pulling away, you pointed eagerly at the back seat of his motorcycle. "I'm going to hug you from back there." His eyes softened instantly, masking the heaviness he felt. "Of course, my love." His voice was quiet, heavy. But before that, reaching behind him, he untied the spare helmet secured to the bike and brought it toward you. "Wear this." Your brows knitted together, a small pout forming on your lips. "It'll ruin my hair." A quiet chuckle escaped him. "That's hardly an excuse, baby." "Jungkook," you huffed dramatically. "I just washed my hair." Then, narrowing your eyes at the helmet, as though it had personally offended you, you pointed an accusing finger at it. "And I don't like heavy things on my head. It probably won't even fit me, so let's just leave it." "Sweetheart," his smile only grew. "It's not heavy. And besides," he lifted the helmet toward you once more. "It was custom made for you. I'd be more surprised if it didn't fit." Your hand shot out before he could place it on your head. You caught his wrist, raising a suspicious brow. "Custom made?" Jungkook blinked, then nodded as though there was nothing unusual about that statement. "You mean..." Your eyes widened slightly. "No one else has ever worn this helmet?" That drew another laugh from him. He leaned in just enough for you to instinctively still, his face now only inches away from yours. The cool night air carried the warmth of his breath across your cheeks. "Why?" His voice dropped into a teasing murmur. "Do you really think I'd let anyone other than my girl sit behind me?" Like a muscle memory, he tucked a loose strand of your slightly damp hair behind your ear. His fingertips lingered for the briefest moment before he pressed a feather-like kiss against your cheek. "That wouldn't be very gentlemanly of me now, would it?" Your eyelids fluttered. Damn. He always managed to make you shy with the simplest words. But then, your eyes suddenly widened. A horrified shriek escaped your lips. Jungkook immediately pulled back, every trace of teasing vanishing from his face. Without another thought, one arm wrapped protectively around your shoulders as he scanned the darkness. What happened? He looked behind you then. Is there an animal? You smacked his arm, hard enough to make him blink. No, idiot. You snatched the helmet straight out of his hands before pointing dramatically at the back of it. What on earth did you have written on the back? Oh. Realization slowly dawned on him, and he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Isn't it cute? You stared at him in complete disbelief, reading out the words. Jaeyeon Jungkook's woman? You slowly looked back at him. Seriously, Jungkook? You wouldn't understand, he answered without the slightest hesitation. The number of women who used to stare at me whenever I rode around alone
You folded your arms, narrowing your eyes. And how exactly did this solve that problem? Without saying a word, Jungkook simply turned his own helmet around. Your eyes landed on the bold engraving.
Lee Yen's man. The lettering was somehow even bigger. You gasped, then immediately buried your burning face behind both hands. Oh my God. A laugh escaped between your fingers. You are so unbelievably cliché. Cliché? Jungkook repeated in disbelief. I prefer prepared. And it worked, didn't it? Did it? You peeked at him through your fingers. Well, he gently took the helmet back from your hands, muttering casually. No one sat behind me except you. Now come on. With practiced gentleness, he lowered the helmet over your head, before fastening the strap beneath your chin with a soft click. We're wasting a perfectly beautiful night. His fingers lightly tapped the top of the helmet. There. I told you it'd fit. You blinked in surprise. It did fit perfectly. Snug enough to feel secure, yet light enough that you barely noticed it resting on your head. You looked back at him, unable to stop the smile tugging at your lips. Okay, you muttered. I hate that I love this.
Was this peace, or simply the quiet happiness of being wrapped in the arms of the person you loved? A small smile found your lips as you rested your cheek against Jungkook's back. The world around you melted into blurred streaks of light. Trees, street lamps, buildings. Everything rushed past with unapologetic speed. For a fleeting moment, it made you think about life itself, how everything was forever changing, forever moving, temporary. Everything except the man you were holding on to. The warmth radiating from his back shielded you from the cold night air, while your knees rested comfortably against his beneath the black denim you both wore. The air around was cold, yet you felt serenely warm. I love this, you murmured against his back. The roar of the engine swallowed your voice. I said, you laughed, raising your voice. I love this. A quiet smile spread beneath Jungkook's helmet. He didn't answer. He simply squeezed your hands over his torso. But somehow, that silence caught your attention. You knew his silences. There were peaceful ones, comfortable ones, the kind that needed no words. But this one felt different, heavier. You had noticed it the moment he arrived beneath your balcony, but you had waited. If something was weighing on his heart, he would tell you when he was ready. At least, you hoped he would. Until then, you simply stayed beside him. Jungkook's fingers found your thigh every now and then whenever the road stretched into a straight path. They traced slow, absent-minded circles through the fabric of your jeans. There was nothing teasing about the touch, nothing playful. If anything, it felt as though he was reassuring himself that you were really there, that you were still holding on to him.
Your heart softened. Without a word, you wrapped your arms around him a little tighter. Jungkook noticed immediately. His free hand slowly slipped away from your thigh, before finding yours where it rested around his waist. His fingers intertwined with yours, before gently pressing your hand against his chest. Neither of you spoke. Neither of you needed to at that moment. Several minutes later, the road began to climb. You looked up, instantly recognizing the familiar winding path. Your eyes lit up. Tapping his shoulder excitedly, you spoke. Hey, we used to come here all the time back then, didn't we? A smile tugged at Jungkook's lips beneath his helmet. We did. Moments later, he quietly pulled the motorcycle to a stop. Everything around you stilled. Sudden silence blanketed the atmosphere. Neither of you moved immediately. You remained exactly where you were, your arms still wrapped around him. Only your gaze drifted past his shoulder, toward the city spread beneath the hill. Down there was a stretch of thousands of tiny lights that shimmered against the darkness. I feel nostalgic. Your voice came out softer than you'd intended. Jungkook simply hummed in response. His fingers tightened around yours, still resting over his heart. You let the comfortable silence settle between you for a while, before calling him softly. Jungkook? Another absent-minded hum. He was still somewhere inside his own thoughts. You tilted your head slightly. Is there something on your mind? The question made him still. He swallowed almost imperceptibly, before forcing a small smile. Why would you say that, baby? You rested your cheek against his shoulder once again. Because you're unusually quiet. A small pause. Tell me. Jungkook closed his eyes for the briefest moment. He knew he couldn't lie to you. Not when you were looking at him with so much trust. Not when your voice carried nothing but concern. Instead of answering, he quietly removed his helmet, hanging it on the motorcycle's side mirror. Before you could ask what he was doing, his hands found your thighs. Hold on. His voice was barely above a whisper.
Gently urging your legs to tighten around his waist, he planted both feet firmly on the ground before turning around, wrapping an arm securely around your back. With slow, careful movements, he lifted you just enough to slide you from the pillion seat to the front of the motorcycle, settling you securely between his arms. He leaned back slightly, giving you enough room to sit comfortably. Then, with almost unbearable gentleness, his fingers found the clasp beneath your chin. A soft click echoed through the quiet night. He lifted the helmet from your head with the same care one might handle something they worshipped. A few slightly damp strands of your hair slipped free, falling around your face, and his senses got engulfed in the vanilla scent of yours. Jungkook's eyes lingered on you for a long moment. There. His fingers gently combed through your hair, smoothing away the strands the helmet had left behind. Better? You nodded softly. Arms rested loosely over his shoulders as you smiled at him. For a fleeting moment, neither of you spoke. His hands remained on your waist. Then, almost hesitantly, he gave you the gentlest tug, closing the small distance between you until there was none at all. He folded you into his arms. The embrace was tighter than usual, needier. You immediately noticed the difference. His breaths came unevenly against your neck, his heartbeat pounding so hard you could feel it through the layers of your clothes. Your brows knitted together in quiet confusion. Jungkook? He didn't answer. Instead, you felt him draw in a shaky breath, then another, and then the faintest sniffle brushed against your shoulder. Your heart dropped. Instinctively, you leaned back, wanting to see his face, but his arms tightened around you before you could move. Please. The word came out broken, barely louder than a whisper. You froze for only a second before understanding washed over you. Without another question, your arms slipped around him once more. One hand found the back of his head. The other slowly rubbed comforting circles across his back. Jungkook melted into your arms. This was exactly what he needed. Just you. Your warmth. The familiar rhythm of your hand slowly moving across his back. It's okay, you whispered against his hair. I'm here. But your own thoughts refused to settle. What had happened? He had looked perfectly fine while sitting at your dining table. Then your mother had mentioned that he had some work to attend to, and he'd left earlier than expected. And now, he was quietly falling apart in your arms. The sight tightened something painfully inside your chest. His voice was barely more than a breath against your heart. I love you, YN. You instinctively cradled the back of his head, holding him a little closer. I know, baby.
A soft smile touched your lips. I love you more. He shook his head against your chest. No. His voice trembled. I really, another shaky breath, really love you. Purely. Truly. I can give up on anything now.
But I can't give up on us. I'm sorry, you know. His grip around you tightened. I'm so sorry. Hey, you called him gently. When he still refused to lift his head, you sighed softly. I told you, you know. I don't blame you for that, baby. Let's leave it in the past. You came back. Your fingers threaded gently through his hair. That's enough for me. Yuno's brows drew together against your chest. How could you forgive him so easily? You were saying the very same words you had said every time he'd apologized for leaving all those years ago. Always with the same patience, the same tenderness, as though you'd repeat them 1,000 times. If only it meant easing the guilt he carried. Why are you like this, sweetheart? Only then did he finally lift his head, and the sight made your brows knit together. His eyes were glistening beneath the distant city lights. Without thinking, you cupped his face, your thumbs gently stroking the tension from his jaw. Little by little, the rigid muscles beneath your fingertips relaxed.
But Jungkook didn't let you continue. Instead, he wrapped his hands around yours, holding them there. Your brows drew together in confusion, but you didn't interrupt him. You simply waited for him to say what had been weighing on his heart all night. Still holding your hands, he brought them between the two of you. His gaze never left yours. What did you ever see? His voice cracked. In a man like me. Your heart sank. What do you mean? A breathless laugh escaped him. Soft. Bitter. It broke something inside you. You really don't see it? He gave the faintest shake of his head. Or are you just too in love with me to see my flaws? Your vision blurred almost instantly. Tears gathered against your lashes before you could stop them. Jungkook saw them. Another tear slipped down his own cheek. There it was. Again. Without meaning to, he was making you cry. But he kept going. You should have slapped me, hit me, pushed me as far away from you as you could. For, he struggled to breathe around the words, for making you that miserable. Don't you realize, Yen? His fingers tightened around yours. How deeply I've hurt you. There was an unfamiliar edge to his voice. Every word sounded like a verdict, as though he was desperately trying to make you see him the way he saw himself. Someone undeserving of your forgiveness. Someone who deserved your anger instead. Your frustration. Your disappointment. Anything. Anything but the tenderness with which you were looking at him now. It was as though his heart and his conscience had become strangers to one another. One sought refuge in your embrace. The other insisted he had no right to remain there. He broke again. His shoulders slumped as he lowered his forehead into your hands, like they were the only place he had ever known to safely fall apart. What did I ever do? His voice cracked. To deserve a heart like yours.
How? He squeezed his eyes shut. How do I live with this, Yen? How do I... The words dissolved into another sob. Convince myself? He finally looked at you again. That I'm not like your father? You froze. The words struck with such force that, for a heartbeat, your lungs forgot how to breathe. Before you could gather your thoughts, before you could even begin to answer, Jungkook spoke again.
His eyes searched yours with a desperation that made your heart ache. I don't know anymore, baby. Please. I feel so lost. He sniffled, lowering his gaze. His fingers loosened around yours. I feel so helpless, Yen. You were already shaking your head, ready to tell him he was wrong.
Ready to tell him none of this changed how you felt. But his next words, again, stole the breath from your lungs. Are you going to leave me? Your mouth parted. Jungkook, please. His voice cracked. Don't. Jungkook, listen to me. You cut him off gently, yet with unmistakable firmness. He fell silent immediately, as though your voice alone had subtly steadied the storm inside him. Slowly, you slipped your hands free from his trembling grasp. They rose to cradle his face instead. Your thumbs brushed beneath his eyes, wiping away the tears one by one. With slow, unhurried, almost reverent movements, as though you were trying to convince him, through nothing more than your touch, that he was still here, and so were you. Look at you. Your voice softened with quiet concern.
What have you done to yourself? Jungkook didn't answer. He simply looked into your eyes. Really looked. As though he were searching for something only you could give him. You let out a quiet sigh. My mom told you about my father. You searched his face. Didn't she? After a moment's hesitation, he gave the smallest nod. His lips parted, ready to speak. But before a single word could leave them, you gently pressed your forefinger against his lips. Shh. Your smile was faint, tender. Just answer me. Your thumb brushed lightly against his cheek. Like this. Jungkook's arms found your back once more. They held on with quiet desperation. You were so calm, so steady. The certainty in your touch held together what little remained of his composure. Left to himself, he feared he would unravel completely. And you're blaming yourself because of that? Another nod. A tender smile, tinged with sadness, touched your lips. Oh, baby. Your eyes never left his. How could you ever compare yourself to that man? Do you even know the kind of a coward he was? His gaze faltered. You waited until he looked at you again. Do you even know what kind of coward he was? Your voice remained gentle, almost painfully so. He abandoned his wife and his daughter when we needed him the most, when every door had already closed, when there wasn't a single person left to lean on, when we couldn't even see a way through. A quiet breath left you. He walked away. He wasn't a man who knew how to stay. Your gaze drifted for a moment. Responsibility frightened him. Hard work exhausted him.
So he lived off my grandmother, and when she couldn't carry him anymore, he lived off my mother. Your eyes found Jungkook's again. Soft, steady, certain. And then there's you. The corners of your lips curved ever so slightly. You've spent your whole life carrying people. You shoulder burdens that were never yours to begin with. You exhaust yourself trying to make sure the people you love never have to. A tear slipped free from his lashes. And somehow, you still wonder whether you're enough. You shook your head gently. No, Jungkook. You're nothing like him. Your hand settled over his heart. You don't run from hardship. You walk straight into it. Because someone you love is standing on the other side.
Your thumb traced slow circles against his chest. So don't ever question my choice. Or my heart. Your forehead brushed his. My man, you smiled through eyes still glistening with tears, has always been my miracle. Her words reached the places his own never could. The panic eased. The fear loosened its grip. But guilt lingered. He gave the faintest shake of his head.
Do you really mean that, Yan? Don't you ever wish that I hadn't left you? His eyes searched yours with quiet uncertainty. Would you ever be able to trust me again? Your lips brushed softly against the bridge of his nose. You never broke my trust. A smile, gentle enough to be mistaken for a sigh, touched your lips. If anything, it only grew deeper. Your fingers threaded through his. The time we spent apart, they were lonely years. They hurt. But never, you held his gaze. Not once did I ever doubt our love. Even when I believed you were married, I never once thought you had chosen to hurt me willingly. A faint laugh escaped your lips, carrying more affection than amusement. Do you know what frustrated me the most? You smiled, shaking your head at the memory. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a reason to hate you. Jungkook had no language for what stirred inside him. There were emotions the heart understood long before language ever could, and this was one of them. It felt older than words, gentler than forgiveness, deeper than relief. All he knew was that something inside him had finally grown still. The relentless battle between his heart and his conscience had quieted beneath the warmth of your love. Perhaps this was what people meant when they spoke of a love so selfless it reached the soul. It never asked you to forget your pain, but that it taught you how to carry it without losing yourself. The time we spent apart, your fingers intertwined with his, holding them gently between your hearts. It only brought us closer, Jungkook. Don't you see? A soft laugh escaped you, though your eyes glistened with unshed tears. Those years gave us every reason to move on, to choose someone else, to doubt each other. You slowly shook your head. But we never did. You smiled, your forehead still resting against his. I don't know how you can't see it, baby, but we were never really apart. Your thumb brushed over his knuckles. We were together all along. In every thought that lingered, in every prayer we whispered, in every heartbeat that still chose the other. Jungkook remained suspended in your words long after they had faded into silence. He didn't close his eyes when you leaned closer, your forehead coming to rest against his. We were never away from each other. You whispered. So don't spend another moment believing you ever left me. He couldn't find the words to answer. The fear, the guilt, the endless questions that had clawed at him for years. One by one, they dissolved into the quiet embrace of the night, leaving behind a peace he hadn't known was still possible. I love you, Yen. His voice was quiet, certain. More than anything in this world.
I love you too. You leaned back just enough to meet his eyes, the corners of your lips lifting into a smile that carried a hint of mischief. And, tilting your head, you delivered the words that nearly made his heart leap out of his chest. You know you'll have to take vows for that, Mr. Future Husband. A soft laugh escaped you. Your mother-in-law can't wait to bully you officially.